Today, we're taking a real close magnifying glass to Tim Hortons' recent and heavily publicized recruitment announcement. We're going to put this huge hiring push to the ultimate sniff test, looking at it specifically from the perspective of a skeptical Canadian job seeker. Is this a genuine course correction to support local communities, or is it just a reactive PR pivot? Let's get right into the facts. Let's start right here with the big announcement that's been making headlines across the country. 10,000. It's a massive number, right? Tim Hortons just launched this sprawling national ad campaign across TV, digital, social media, the whole shebang, aiming to recruit 10,000 new local workers. According to their official press release, this huge surge in hiring is designed to support 80 brand new restaurant openings across Canada this year, as well as just covering natural staff turnover. On paper, for a local looking for work, 10,000 jobs sounds like an absolute golden ticket. But if you're a skeptical job seeker, well, context is everything, and the timing of this announcement is definitely raising a lot of eyebrows. Just look at the sharp contrast between the company's internal messaging and the external pressures they're actually facing right now. On one side, Tim Hortons is claiming this is a return to their roots, a stated goal of hiring local team members and supporting Canadian communities. It's a great feel-good message, but peel back the curtain and you see some pretty undeniable external realities. For one, the company is facing intense community backlash over their labor practices. On top of that, as reported by CP24, there is a looming, heavily publicized threat of American competitor Dunkin' Donuts preparing to enter and expand in the highly lucrative Canadian coffee and donut market. It really makes you wonder, is the true catalyst for this hiring spree actually just a fear of new competition? To truly understand the job seeker's perspective here, we've got to break down the actual economic reality of these roles. Looking at this data compiled for 2026, team members and cashiers are looking at an average hourly pay somewhere between $16 and $18.50 an hour. Bakers max out around $19. We absolutely have to ask, is this wage structure actually economically viable for locals today? I mean, when you stock up $16 to $19 an hour against the crushing weight of rising rent, groceries, and skyrocketing tuition, the math gets incredibly tight. The actual economic viability of taking one of these 10,000 jobs is a very serious hurdle for the exact people Tim Hortons is suddenly trying so hard to court. And that brings us to the harsh reality on the ground for young Canadians. 16%. This number starkly highlights the youth unemployment rate among returning students aged 15 to 24 this year. We are in a period marked by intense economic uncertainty. For decades, jobs at places like Tim Hortons were these reliable stepping stones for youth to gain independence. But today, the Daily Scrum News reports that young Canadians are firing off dozens, sometimes literally hundreds of resumes into the void without a single response. This 16% unemployment rate is the very real, very painful reason why there's so much localized frustration when major corporations look overseas before hiring the youth sitting right in their own backyard. And honestly, this timeline reveals the exact source of that public frustration. Talk about corporate whiplash. Let's look back at 2021, right during those post-COVID labor shortages. Tim Hortons actively lobbied Ottawa to expand access to the temporary foreign worker program. They literally pushed the government to maintain broader access to foreign labor. Fast forward to 2024, and the usage of the program begins to naturally decline. Now, in 2026, we see this massive, highly publicized push for 10,000 local hires. The sheer contradiction between lobbying heavily for foreign workers just a few years ago and suddenly wrapping themselves in the flag of local hiring today, that's exactly why job seekers are approaching this entire campaign with some very heavy skepticism. Let's put the actual numbers into perspective as they stand right now. Out of approximately 110,000 employees nationwide, about 4,000 are temporary foreign workers. So that's only about 3.6% of their workforce. Now, the company uses this exact data to defend its practices, pointing out that, hey, the vast majority of their stuff is already local. But critics counter this argument strongly. They point out that in an era of 16% youth unemployment, those 4,000 entry-level jobs should have prioritized struggling local youth and students from the very beginning, rather than being used as some sort of long-term staffing solution. So the truly crucial point here is how this new campaign is actually being implemented on the ground. A report from The Deep Dive described this 10,000 job initiative perfectly, calling it a cultural commitment and not a structural overhaul. What does that actually mean? Well, it means this new campaign introduces absolutely zero formal corporate policy change. There's no new mandate. There is no hard cap on temporary foreign worker usage. The actual realization of these 10,000 local jobs relies entirely on the voluntary choices and the good faith of individual independent restaurant owners. And it really begs the question, are these local franchisees even operationally equipped to handle such a massive, rapid shift in how they recruit and hire? To understand why corporate can't just force this issue, you really only have to look at the Tim Hortons Standards of Business Practices Handbook. Under the section regarding antitrust laws, it explicitly states that the company must always deal with our franchisees as independent business people who must be free to exercise their own judgment in matters affecting their business. So because of these franchise agreements and antitrust laws, corporate can only launch an advertising campaign and suggest local hiring targets. They legally cannot mandate it. The whole thing is entirely up to the individual franchise owners to actually execute. And relying on franchise owners to navigate complex labor shifts carries systemic risks, especially when you're talking about the temporary foreign worker program. Consider this number, $111,000. That is the actual penalty a Canadian Tire franchise recently faced for non-compliance related to the program. This really highlights the systemic issues across the entire retail and fast food sector. When you combine franchise independence with complex foreign labor programs, it opens the door to severe compliance issues, worker treatment concerns, and artificial regional wage suppression that directly hurts the wider local economy. Moving on to the community backlash, a verdict from the public. When Tim Hortons made this announcement, they were likely hoping for a massive PR victory. But instead, they were met with immediate, heated backlash online. We're going to look at some direct comments from the r/Canada Reddit community right now to truly understand the public's verdict on this whole pivot. Take this perfectly sarcastic snapshot from Reddit user TubeFrameMR2, who wrote, "Huge if true, the country apparently did contain some Canadians able to pour coffee after all." It's funny, for sure, but it brilliantly captures the widespread skepticism out there. It perfectly distills the frustration of Canadians who are asking why this localized hiring effort is only happening now, after years of the company defending its reliance on foreign labor just to pour coffee and bake donuts. And the community definitely isn't buying the whole supporting the community narrative either. Reddit user RDSWS simply states, translation, sales are down, profit is down. This highlights a deep, deep suspicion that this local hiring pivot isn't driven by corporate selflessness at all, but rather it's a highly calculated financial strategy. Consumers are becoming hyper-aware of labor practices, and the math for corporates is pretty simple. The high cost of this massive recruitment campaign is still far cheaper than the devastating financial losses they'd suffer from a sustained consumer boycott. They're ultimately trying to protect the bottom line from angry local consumers who have just simply stopped buying their daily coffee. Finally, we see how all these threads kind of tie together in this comment from Odd Foundation 4637. Because Dunkin' Donuts is coming, too little too late, Tims, you betrayed Canadian youth. Here we really see that deep-seated feeling of betrayal among Canadian job seekers. They're drawing a very direct correlation between the sudden 10,000 job hiring spree and the terrifying corporate fear of Dunkin' Donuts stealing their local market share. To a lot of people, it looks like Tim Hortons is only courting Canadian youth right now because they desperately need them to fend off incoming American competition. To wrap up our explainer, we really have to look at the big picture and ask the ultimate question. Is this pivot just too little, too late to win back Canadian youth? I mean, can a well-produced national ad campaign about 10,000 jobs actually undo years of public frustration over lobbying records and wage suppression? Will individual franchise owners actually follow through on these voluntary suggestions, or are they completely unequipped for the shift? Is this a true turning point or just a 10,000 job Band-Aid on a broken relationship? The next time you grab a coffee, maybe take a look at who's pouring it, because the answer to whether this campaign was a success won't be found in a press release. It'll be standing right behind the counter. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.